In February 2026, royal insiders revealed an explosive confrontation inside Buckingham Palace. Princess Anne directly confronted Meghan Markle, dismantling her demands for renewed royal status. What followed left Meghan in tears, her influence shattered, and the monarchy stronger than ever. This was no argument, it was correction. Royal style. The shocking clash. Meghan's audacious move. It began behind the polished doors of Clarence House, far from the public eye. In late January 2026, Meghan Markle reportedly confronted senior palace aides with an extraordinary demand: the restoration of her royal privileges, including the use of the Duchess of Sussex title in official and commercial contexts. What seemed at first like a private discussion quickly escalated into what insiders later called a direct challenge to hierarchy. Witnesses described an uncharacteristically tense exchange. Meghan pressing for recognition, aides refusing to yield without royal approval. Within hours, whispers reached Buckingham Palace, and a new phase of confrontation began. The request was not framed as a plea for reconciliation, but as leverage. Meghan allegedly argued that her global influence could still benefit the monarchy if restored to formal standing. However, palace officials interpreted this as a pressure tactic, an attempt to force institutional acknowledgement through media reach and public sympathy. The effort came at a time when the House of Windsor was tightening internal controls, wary of any narrative manipulation following years of public controversy. What made this clash explosive was not the words exchanged, but the timing. King Charles was managing constitutional reform, Prince William was consolidating authority over royal operations, and Princess Anne had quietly assumed the role of crisis stabilizer. Meghan's sudden reappearance in royal negotiations felt like a spark in a powder room of restrained discontent. It wasn't defiance, one aide said later. It was miscalculation. She walked into a system that no longer feared her voice. By the next morning, internal reports described the event as a protocol breach under review. Yet behind that formal language, palace insiders already knew the confrontation had awakened something far larger. Princess Anne, known for her unflinching discipline and decades of service, requested a full briefing. To those within the hierarchy, her involvement was a signal. This was no longer a public relations issue. It was an institutional matter. Within days, the palace shifted from passive silence to quiet mobilization. Anne's intervention marked a shift from reaction to command, from caution to confrontation. As one royal aide observed to The Times, "The moment Anne stood up, the discussion stopped being about forgiveness. It became about standards." Transition. Yet while the palace was fortifying its walls, Meghan's world beyond them was beginning to show cracks of its own, partnerships faltering, allies stepping back, and her once bright global aura dimming fast. Under pressure, Meghan's shrinking influence. By early 2026, the glamorous sheen surrounding Meghan Markle had begun to wear thin. Beneath the headlines of reinvention and empowerment, her professional footing was quietly eroding. Major partnerships that once seemed unshakable, from Netflix to international speaking agencies, began to waver. Industry insiders cited reputation volatility, a phrase that had haunted celebrity figures before but carried sharper weight when tied to royal lineage. The numbers told the story. Digital engagement on Meghan's social channels had fallen nearly 30% since mid-2025, and public opinion surveys by YouGov showed declining favorability both in the UK and the US. High-profile executives who once viewed her as a global ambassador now described her brand as unpredictable. Several longtime advisors reportedly withdrew from Archewell, leaving operational gaps that fueled speculation of internal tension. She was surrounded by yes men, one Hollywood consultant claimed. When reality hit, there was no one left to steady the ground. These professional tremors coincided with personal strain. Financial audits tied to production delays reportedly led Netflix to reconsider future projects under her banner, while Spotify, still reeling from the abrupt end of the Archetypes podcast, declined further collaboration. Each setback chipped away at the image Meghan had carefully constructed since 2020, that of an independent visionary reshaping modern media. Instead, industry circles began to whisper a different narrative, one of diminishing credibility and overextension. Under such mounting pressure, Meghan began seeking an institutional breakthrough, a return to legitimacy through royal re-engagement. Palace observers now believe her January confrontation stemmed directly from this desperation. She needed validation that money and influence couldn't buy, said a former court correspondent. But by trying to force it, she lost the one thing she wanted most: respect. The shift was subtle yet decisive. Tabloids that once chased her stories for glamour now covered her as a cautionary tale of media overreach. Public sympathy ebbed away, replaced by curiosity tinged with fatigue. People stopped seeing her as a victim, said The Guardian's royal analyst. They started seeing her as a strategist who misread her board. Transition, and then came the flashpoint. A digital scandal that would escalate the quiet tension into a full-scale royal showdown, with one young royal unexpectedly caught in the crossfire. The digital threat, a calculated but misdirected gambit. The confrontation shifted from whispers to crisis in February 2026, when a video clip surfaced online appearing to implicate Lady Louise Windsor, the discreet and bookish daughter of Prince Edward and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh. The footage, circulating across encrypted networks and gossip sites within hours, allegedly showed Louise in a compromising conversation, one that could tarnish her quiet reputation. For a brief moment, even seasoned royal correspondents were stunned. It looked authentic, one said later, and that was the problem. However, behind palace gates, alarm turned quickly into forensic scrutiny. Digital analysts at GCHQ working under royal request began dissecting the material within 24 hours. Metadata anomalies appeared, frame mismatches, artificial lighting shifts, audio inconsistencies. It wasn't long before experts confirmed what few dared to say aloud. The footage was fabricated, a sophisticated deepfake designed to simulate scandal. A digital weapon, an intelligence source called it, crafted to sow doubt and destabilize confidence. What made this revelation explosive was the alleged motive. Palace insiders traced the timing and content of the upload to coincide with Meghan's internal demands for recognition, leading investigators to suspect the clip had been deployed as strategic pressure. Whether or not she sanctioned it directly remained uncertain, but the connection in sequence and intent was undeniable. For the monarchy, it was no longer a dispute of influence, it was psychological warfare. Princess Anne reportedly received the digital forensics briefing personally in St. James's Palace, flanked by cyber intelligence specialists. Her response, as described by one aide, was controlled fury. The breach wasn't just reputational, it was constitutional. To weaponize misinformation against a young royal with no public voice crossed every line of royal ethics and security. The matter moved from internal concern to institutional crisis. The palace acted decisively. Security restrictions tightened, legal notices were drafted, and the Privy Council's Digital Integrity Committee was activated, a measure unseen in decades. It wasn't about the video anymore, said one senior courtier. It was about who dared test the system, and what that system would do in return. Transition. But the greatest casualty of this misfire was not institutional. It was personal. The fabricated storm pulled an innocent young royal into the eye of global speculation, forcing the palace to act not with anger, but with protection. Lady Louise targeted, an innocent thrown into the fray. At just 22 years old, Lady Louise Windsor had lived her life deliberately out of the spotlight. A university student, an artist, and one of the few royals to still ride in the Royal Windsor Horse Show with quiet grace. But in February 2026, that peaceful anonymity vanished overnight. The falsified video placed her name in trending searches worldwide. For the first time, a member of the younger royal generation became collateral damage in a digital crossfire not of her making. The palace's reaction was immediate and protective. Within hours of confirming the footage was synthetic, Princess Anne and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, co-chaired an emergency meeting of the Royal Household Child and Youth Protection Office. Scheduled appearances by Louise were quietly cancelled, her academic details removed from public university websites, and her digital profiles scrubbed. Royal aides called the response containment by erasure, an unprecedented step meant to shield her from further intrusion. Public reaction swung sharply in her favor. Even critics of the monarchy condemned the attack as predatory and cruel. Sympathy poured in across social media, painting Louise not as a scandal figure, but as a victim of manipulation. She didn't seek fame, wrote the Times. Fame came hunting for her. Meanwhile, the attempted media pressure backfired catastrophically. Analysts traced fake video amplifiers to anonymous marketing firms allegedly linked to entertainment intermediaries once connected to Meghan's network. The revelation hardened palace resolve. The message from Buckingham Palace was clear and measured. The crown protects its own. The Queen's niece, long a symbol of humility and privacy, now became a living emblem of royal innocence under attack. As the investigation widened, even the public began to shift their view of Meghan's strategy. What had once been seen as bold ambition was now viewed as reckless overreach. The sympathy she once commanded evaporated. The turning point had come not through a press statement or interview, but through the quiet dignity of a young woman who had done nothing wrong. Transition. And as the storm intensified, one figure stood ready to restore order. Princess Anne, the palace's steel nerve, who would soon transform quiet fury into decisive action. Princess Anne steps in. The turning point. When the royal family faces turmoil, it is Princess Anne who moves first, and never for spectacle. On the morning of February 4th, 2026, inside St. James's Palace, Anne convened an emergency council unlike any seen in recent royal memory. Seated around the table were senior aides, legal strategists, cybersecurity specialists, and 2 members of the Privy Council. The agenda, stamped priority, institutional security, was stark. Expose the origin of the falsified video targeting Lady Louise Windsor and neutralize whoever had attempted to manipulate the monarchy. Anne's tone, by all accounts, was icily controlled. "We do not respond emotionally. We respond surgically," one advisor quoted her as saying. Within hours, she commissioned a joint forensic audit between GCHQ and the Royal Digital Intelligence Unit, ordering the data trail to be traced across encrypted servers in the US and UAE. The findings were immediate and damning. The metadata confirmed that the video had been artificially stitched, compressed, and uploaded through intermediaries designed to conceal its source. For Anne, this wasn't just deceit. It was an attack on the Crown's credibility in the digital era. At 6 p.m., Anne briefed King Charles III personally. Her message was uncompromising. The monarchy could not allow manipulation, technological, emotional, or media-driven, to dictate its future. By nightfall, the palace had shifted from defense to controlled counteraction. Legal departments issued preservation orders to social media platforms, while royal communications prepared a quiet, factual statement confirming the falsification. Not one word of emotional language was included. It was the definition of discipline, a senior staffer recalled. Anne's measured decisiveness reframed the crisis. Within days, commentators across the UK described her as the Crown's conscience. Even those within Hollywood circles privately admitted that her calm, forceful leadership had extinguished any sympathy for Meghan's position. "When Anne steps forward," said a former court correspondent, "it signals not chaos, but closure." This was the turning point, the moment the palace stopped being a reactive institution and became an active force. It was no longer about public image. It was about principle, precision, and the unmistakable message that the monarchy would not be coerced. Transition. With Anne leading the charge and the king's approval secured, the palace prepared its next move, a quiet but devastating counteroffensive that would restore control without uttering a single public accusation. Monarchy's quiet but powerful counterattack. When the royal family strikes back, it does so not with spectacle, but with silence. After Princess Anne's investigation exposed the forged footage and confirmed the manipulation attempt, King Charles III authorized what palace insiders called a containment and clarification protocol. It was elegant, deliberate, and devastating. The operation began inside Buckingham Palace's Sovereign Communications Office on February 8, 2026. Anne, Prince William, Princess Catherine, and Duchess Sophie met with the king to finalize a united institutional response. There would be no interviews, no leaks, and no rebuttals, only action. Legal teams moved swiftly to issue private cease and desist letters to digital distributors, while intelligence liaisons briefed the Home Office and Cabinet Office on coordinated measures against synthetic disinformation. Publicly, the monarchy remained silent, but its machinery hummed beneath the surface. The Royal Archives released a brief statement affirming their confidence in Lady Louise's integrity, calling her a private young woman undeserving of intrusion. It was a single paragraph, yet it carried the force of a decree. That one line ended the speculation, noted the Telegraph. It reminded everyone that the royal family speaks through permanence, not panic. Behind the scenes, senior royals closed ranks. Catherine personally reached out to Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, assuring her that the family would stand firm. Prince William chaired a constitutional review on digital integrity laws, signaling that future attacks of this kind would face legal retaliation, not public debate. The narrative, once chaotic, became controlled and unified. Even the entertainment industry felt the ripple. Corporate partners who had courted Meghan began quietly retreating. Boardrooms from Los Angeles to London suddenly deemed royal controversy a reputational risk. The palace didn't need to speak. Influence had spoken for them. By mid-February, commentators described the royal family's restraint as a masterclass in controlled power. There was no anger, no interviews, no threats, only precision. And at the heart of it all stood Princess Anne, silent yet immovable, her actions redefining what royal authority looked like in the digital age. Transition. But outside the palace gates, the impact was spreading fast. The corporate world was beginning to turn its back, and the price of miscalculation was about to come due. Corporate ripple effect. Netflix and media withdraw. By mid-February 2026, the palace's quiet precision began producing loud consequences, not through speeches or sanctions, but through silence. The first tremor came from Los Angeles, where Netflix executives met behind closed doors to review the Sussex portfolio. The decision was unanimous. The multi-million-pound partnership, once hailed as a groundbreaking deal, would not be renewed. There was no public statement, no red carpet farewell, only an internal memo leaked days later, citing brand alignment and reputational stability. It was the corporate world's polite equivalent of exile. For Meghan Markle, the message was devastating. The company that once sold her vision of global storytelling had chosen withdrawal over controversy. It wasn't rejection by anger, wrote Variety. It was rejection by indifference. Other dominoes soon followed. Spotify, already bruised from the earlier archetypes fallout, quietly removed all promotional material tied to her brand. Agencies in New York and Beverly Hills began deleting her image from talent pages. The silence spread faster than scandal. Industry insiders described the reaction as strategic containment. Executives, mindful of the monarchy's subtle but formidable influence, opted to distance themselves before risk turned into liability. "When the crown moves in quiet defense," said a senior PR strategist, "no one wants to be on the wrong side of history." Even Netflix's UK division, typically independent in its decisions, deferred to higher corporate caution, understanding that any association with falsified royal material would permanently damage trust. By late February, the entertainment tide had turned completely. Invitations vanished, collaborations dissolved, and Meghan's media presence shrank. To the public, it appeared as though she had simply gone silent, but insiders knew the silence was enforced, not chosen. "The phone stopped ringing," said one former team member. "One minute, she was a global headline. The next, she was a corporate risk." This was the monarchy's unseen power at work, not confrontation, but consequence. Where speeches failed, institutions acted. Meghan's influence, once powered by platforms and partnerships, had been eclipsed by the quiet unity of the crown. Transition. Yet, while the boardrooms of Hollywood turned cold, the heart of Britain warmed. Public sympathy swung sharply toward the monarchy, rallying behind Princess Anne's calm authority and Lady Louise's quiet resilience. Public reaction. Sympathy flips to support for the crown. What began as a social media spectacle soon evolved into a defining test of public loyalty. By late February 2026, the British mood had shifted entirely. The emotional tide that once fueled support for Meghan Markle now flowed toward the monarchy, and, remarkably, toward Princess Anne, whose handling of the crisis captured something the nation had missed: quiet strength. Polling by YouGov showed a dramatic 20-point rise in approval for senior working royals, while Meghan's favorability fell below 30%, her lowest since 2020. Commentators attributed the reversal not to palace spin, but to tone. "Anne didn't shout," observed The Guardian. "She acted, and that silence earned trust." Across breakfast tables and talk shows, the discussion transformed. No longer a feud between personalities, it became a referendum on principle: the monarchy's duty versus an individual's ambition. Public sympathy for Lady Louise Windsor deepened the divide. The sight of a young royal, polite, private, and undeserving of scandal, galvanized national empathy. Social media, once Meghan's battleground, became a platform for royal solidarity. Hashtags like #ProtectLouise and #StandWithAnne trended for days. Even critics of the institution conceded that the palace's restraint had been measured, not manipulative. The media, too, recalibrated its tone. Major outlets that had once courted Meghan's perspective now praised the Crown's composure. BBC Panorama aired a special titled Digital Integrity and the Monarchy, framing the confrontation as a case study in resilience. Internationally, newspapers from Toronto to Sydney echoed a similar narrative, that modern monarchy, when tested, had shown it could adapt without losing dignity. In public perception, the story's moral shifted. Meghan's strategy, once seen as assertive, was redefined as reckless. She mistook sympathy for leverage, wrote The Times. But the Crown doesn't negotiate under pressure. It endures. By March, the verdict was clear. The monarchy stood taller, steadier, and more united than it had in years. The digital age had brought its fiercest test, and under Princess Anne's unwavering discipline, it had passed. Transition. But while the institution emerged stronger, Meghan herself was breaking, emotionally, publicly, and privately, as the full cost of her failed maneuver came crashing down. The personal toll. Meghan Markle in tears. By March 2026, the emotional fallout reached its peak. Behind the closed doors of Montecito, Meghan Markle, once the confident duchess who defied royal protocol, was reportedly reduced to tears. Sources described tense strategy calls where the collapse became undeniable. The Netflix deal gone, partnerships suspended, and public sympathy turned cold. According to one insider, Meghan broke down after learning her latest documentary pitch had been rejected by 3 distributors. She thought it would be redemption, said the source. Instead, it ended everything. Those close to her painted a picture of disbelief and regret. Prince Harry, still in California but increasingly distant, tried mediating, yet the silence between them grew. "They're trapped in their own fallout," said one acquaintance. Even once supportive media outlets shifted tone. The Washington Post called it bluntly, "Meghan's empire collapses from within." Former allies withdrew. Invitations faded. For the first time since 2020, Meghan faced a storm she couldn't control, and a monarchy she couldn't move. Her tears became symbolic, the collapse of image and ambition. Yet, the hardest truth was personal. Princess Anne had outmaneuvered her, calmly, decisively, without words. As one commentator noted, Anne didn't argue. She waited, and time chose her side. Aftermath: what this means for Meghan and the monarchy. By April 2026, the dust settled, and history quietly turned. Princess Anne's calm intervention, backed by King Charles III, reshaped the monarchy for the digital age. It wasn't just a defense of Lady Louise Windsor, it was a reclamation of institutional integrity. The Royal Digital Integrity Charter, approved that month, became the monarchy's biggest reform since the 2011 Royal Succession Act, setting clear boundaries against misinformation and manipulation. For Meghan Markle, recovery seemed impossible. Her Archewell Foundation faced dual reviews. In the UK and US, her sponsors withdrew, and her once lucrative brand faded. Public appearances turned muted. Her influence dissolved. Meanwhile, Lady Louise, serene and dignified, reappeared at Eton's Literary Forum, symbolizing quiet strength. Commentators agreed. Anne's leadership didn't just control scandal, it redefined power. Duty outweighs drama, read The Guardian. On BBC Newsnight, the conclusion was sharper. Meghan sought to challenge the Crown's authority. Instead, she confirmed it. From palace halls to Hollywood studios, one truth endured through 2026. Power built on perception crumbles, but power grounded in principle survives. By spring 2026, Meghan's tears had dried, but the message remained. Princess Anne's calm authority ended the feud. No threats, no spectacle, just discipline. The monarchy proved one truth: emotion fades, but tradition and duty never bend to ambition.